In 1936, the world's armies were still preparing for the next war using the logic of the previous one. Bolt-action rifles dominated the battlefield. Soldiers fired, cycled the bolt manually, reacquired their target, and fired again. Then came the M1 Garand. Designed by Canadian-American engineer John C. Garand, it became the first semi-automatic rifle officially adopted as the standard infantry weapon of a major army. This single decision changed everything. Unlike bolt-action rifles, such as the German Kar 98K, the M1 Garand allowed a soldier to fire 8 consecutive rounds without manually operating the bolt. Each pull of the trigger fired a shot and automatically chambered the next round. For the first time in history, industrial-scale warfare met industrial-scale firepower at the individual soldier level. The impact on the battlefield was immediate and overwhelming. Firepower. An American infantryman armed with an M1 Garand could maintain a rate of fire 2 to 3 times higher than an enemy equipped with a bolt-action rifle. This transformed every rifleman into a suppressive force capable of pinning down enemy units, winning close-quarters engagements, dominating assaults and defensive positions. Entire enemy squads could be outgunned by fewer American soldiers simply due to volume of fire. Reliability. The Garand proved itself across every environment of World War II. The jungles and sand of the Pacific, the frozen winters of Europe, the mud, rain, and chaos of Normandy. Despite its semi-automatic complexity, it demonstrated remarkable durability. General George S. Patton famously described it as the greatest battle implement ever devised. This was not propaganda, it was battlefield reality. Few weapons in history have generated a myth as persistent as the M1 Garand ping. When the 8th and final round was fired, the empty in-block clip was automatically ejected, producing a distinctive metallic sound. The legend. According to popular belief, the sound alerted enemy soldiers. It signaled that the American rifleman was out of ammunition. The enemy could then rush forward and kill him during reload. This story became widely accepted as fact. The reality. Historical and technical analysis tells a very different story. On a battlefield filled with artillery, machine guns, explosions, and shouting, a sound measuring roughly 70 decibels was effectively inaudible. American infantry fought in fire teams, not as isolated individuals. Soldiers covered each other while reloading. Many soldiers carried extra clips and reloaded instinctively without hesitation. There is no verified combat evidence that the ping led to systematic battlefield deaths. The danger was theoretical, not real. Why the myth refused to die? So why does the story persist? Because it was cinematic gold. Post-war films, television series, and later video games such as Medal of Honor, Call of Duty used the sound effect to create tension and drama. The ping became a narrative device, a moment of vulnerability, a signal of danger, a dramatic pause before violence. Over time, fiction replaced fact. The myth survived not because it was true, but because it was memorable. Legacy of the M1 Garand. The M1 Garand was not a flawed weapon with a fatal weakness. It was a revolutionary leap forward. It gave Allied forces a decisive edge in infantry combat. It redefined what a standard-issue rifle could be, and it laid the mechanical and doctrinal groundwork for modern assault rifles. Long after World War II ended, the influence of the Garand lived on, studied, analyzed, and adapted by future weapons designers around the world, including, indirectly, those who would one day become America's greatest rivals.
From rejection to revelation, Kalashnikov's search for the perfect rifle. The M1 Garand had been tested, it had been analyzed, and officially, it had been rejected. For the Soviet Union in 1943, the American rifle was an impressive curiosity, but nothing more. It would not be adopted. It would not be copied. The Red Army had a war to win, and it demanded weapons that could be produced quickly, cheaply, and in enormous numbers. On paper, the story should have ended there, but history rarely follows official conclusions. Because while generals moved on and factories kept producing Mosin Nagants and submachine guns, one man did not forget what he had seen. His name was Mikhail Kalashnikov, and he was asking the wrong questions, the kind that quietly changed the world. A soldier, not an engineer. Mikhail Kalashnikov was not born into privilege. He was born in 1919 into a poor peasant family in Siberia. a place where survival depended on practicality, endurance, and improvisation. From a young age, he showed a fascination with machinery. He took things apart. He rebuilt them. He wanted to understand how things worked and why they failed. When the war came, Kalashnikov did not enter it as a weapons designer. He entered it as a tank commander. In 1941, during the brutal opening phases of Operation Barbarossa, Kalashnikov was severely wounded in combat. Shrapnel tore through his body. He was evacuated from the front and sent to recover in a military hospital. It was there, lying in a hospital bed, that his future truly began. Questions born from defeat. As Kalashnikov recovered, he listened. He listened to wounded soldiers returning from the front. Infantrymen, tank crews, survivors of ambushes and encirclements. Their complaints were always the same. Our rifles jammed. They broke in the mud. They were too slow. They failed us when we needed them most. Kalashnikov noticed something important. The men were not complaining about courage. They were not complaining about training. They were complaining about their weapons. This realization struck him deeply. If weapons could be improved, if they could be made more forgiving, more reliable, more suited to real combat, then soldiers would live longer, and wars might be won faster. Kalashnikov began sketching ideas. Not blueprints, questions. Why did some weapons survive dirt and neglect? Why did others require constant maintenance? Why did certain designs tolerate mistakes, while others punished them? Studying the enemy and the ally. During his recovery, Kalashnikov was granted access to technical evaluations of various firearms, Soviet, German, and Allied. Among them was the 47-page technical report on the American M1 Garand. This was no propaganda document. It was cold, clinical, mechanical. It detailed the long-stroke gas piston system, the rotating bolt with 2 locking lugs, the weapon's behavior under heat, cold, and fouling. Kalashnikov read it carefully, not as a patriot, not as an ideologue, but as a mechanic. He recognized something immediately. The Garand was not reliable because it was American. It was reliable because of how force was transmitted through its system. The long-stroke gas piston delivered consistent energy. The rotating bolt locked securely, then unlocked smoothly. The design balanced power and tolerance. But it also demanded precision manufacturing. And that, Kalashnikov knew, was its weakness. The Soviet reality. Kalashnikov understood the Soviet industrial reality better than most designers. Factories were damaged. Materials varied wildly in quality. Workers were often undertrained. Production had to be fast. A successful Soviet weapon could not rely on perfection. It had to function despite imperfection. The Garand worked because it was precise. Kalashnikov wanted a rifle that worked because it was forgiving. That distinction mattered. He began imagining a weapon that borrowed the Garand's core principles, but rejected its refinement. Same physics, different philosophy, early failures and lessons. Kalashnikov's first designs were not successful. His early submachine gun prototypes were rejected. His early rifles failed tests. Some broke, some jammed, some were simply outperformed. But each failure taught him something. He learned that simplicity beats elegance. Loose tolerances beat tight tolerances. Reliability matters more than accuracy. He observed German weapons closely, especially the STG-44, the world's first true assault rifle. It introduced the idea of an intermediate cartridge and controllable automatic fire. Kalashnikov absorbed this lesson as well. The future, he realized, was not full-power rifle cartridges. It was controllable firepower, a new kind of rifle. By the late 1940s, Kalashnikov had synthesized everything he had learned. From the Garand, long-stroke gas operation, rotating bolt concept. From Soviet doctrine, extreme simplicity, wide manufacturing tolerances. From German experience, intermediate cartridge, automatic and semi-automatic capability. The result was not a copy. It was a transformation. A rifle designed not to be perfect, but to work no matter what. Mud, sand, ice, neglect, poor maintenance, inexperienced soldiers. The rifle would fire. The birth of an idea that would not die. When Kalashnikov submitted his new design for trials, it stood out immediately. It was ugly. It was crude. It rattled. But it worked. Again, and again, and again. Where other rifles failed tests, it continued firing. Where others jammed, it powered through. Soviet evaluators noticed something unsettling. This rifle did not demand discipline from the soldier. It absorbed the soldier's mistakes. And that made it dangerous, not just to enemies, but to global balance. Irony in steel. Kalashnikov never denied the influence of the M1 Garand. He acknowledged it openly, but history would remember something else. The rifle that inspired him was never meant to arm the Soviet Union. It was sent as a demonstration, a symbol of American confidence. Yet its mechanical DNA would echo through the most iconic weapon of the Cold War, a weapon that would arm revolutions, define insurgencies, and become the most produced firearm in human history. The Americans had sent a message. The Soviets had answered it. In steel, the calm before the storm. By the time Kalashnikov's rifle was finalized, the world had changed. World War II was over. The Cold War had begun, and a new weapon was about to enter service, one that would reshape global conflict for decades to come. The irony was complete, but the consequences were only beginning.